Good afternoon and welcome to the Full Scottish. I'm here on Sunday the 2nd of June. Today we're bringing you, or attempting to bring you a special edition as today is the official launch of the SNP general election campaign in Glasgow, and we're hoping to join them live as it happens. But before that, we're going to give you your usual Ukraine update, and today is day 830. President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged a group of top defence officials at a Singapore security conference to attend the Swiss summit this month on ending the Russian war in Ukraine. Zelensky told the Shangri-La Dialogue Security Forum on Sunday that he was disappointed some world leaders had not yet confirmed attendance at the conference in about 2 weeks. The Ukrainian president did not specify any country by name, but the possible participation of China, Russia's most important ally, has been seen as a key issue. Chinese Defence Minister Dong Yun spoke earlier in the day at the Shangri-La conference, but did not appear to be in the room when Zelensky made his appeal. President Zelensky has said that he met with the US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin on the sidelines of the Shangri-La Dialogue. We discussed what's key, the defence needs of our country, the strengthening of the Ukrainian air defence system, the F-16 coalition, and the preparation of a bilateral security agreement. A Russian missile strike on residences injured 13 people, including 8 children, in Balaklia town in the Kharkiv region yesterday, Ukrainian prosecutors have said. Prosecutors also announced that recovery operations had concluded at the site of the 3 missile strikes on Friday in the city of Kharkiv, with a death toll of 9, most in a badly damaged apartment building. Nazar Voloshin, a military spokesperson, told national television on Saturday that Ukrainian forces controlled 70% of Vovchansk, that's 5 kilometres or about 3 miles inside the border, which Russian troops have been trying to capture. Ukraine officials have said that Russian forces fired a combined 100 missiles and drones at Ukraine overnight into Saturday morning, hitting energy sites. The Air Force said it shot down 35 of the missiles and all but one of the drones. 2 thermal power plants were damaged. Mourners and soldiers have laid flowers at a statue over the St. Petersburg grave of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the Wagner mercenary leader who sent his forces into Ukraine for Vladimir Putin, but then staged a mutiny against the Russian government before being killed when his plane was blown up. Putin, who said grenade fragments were found in the plane's wreckage, called him a talented man who had made serious mistakes. The UK Ministry of Defence has estimated that the number of Russian troops killed or wounded since the war's outbreak has now likely reached 500,000. Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas has told the BBC that we have no plan B for a Russian victory because then we would stop focusing on plan A, helping Ukraine push back the Russian invasion. So that's today's Ukraine update, day 830, and so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to, so this is now going to be broadcasting Scotland's coverage of the SNP general election campaign launch live from Glasgow, and so without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to the studio, to the launch event in Glasgow now.
Few short weeks and he's become our secret weapon. In the few short weeks since he became party leader and First Minister, he has seen his personal popularity and approval ratings go through the roof while our opponents are languishing. Now, I also want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to all our candidates and their teams throughout Scotland. Since Rishi Sunak made his ill-fated and rather damp announcement that there would be an election, the party has hit the ground running with amazing, vibrant campaigns in every constituency. And I'll let my candidate friends into a secret. I monitor your social media output. And when I see, as I do, large teams of SNP activists throughout the country knocking doors, delivering leaflets, it tells me 2 things. 1, we've got what it takes to win the ground war, and we're already doing what we need to win the air war, so thank you. But this election must motivate our support in every constituency to ensure that every independent supporter knows that the SNP is not simply for Scotland, but for independence, and that sitting this election out or lending your vote to another party risks setting independence back. That's important, and that's why the material available, the support from our dedicated HQ team, visits from the First Minister, our brilliant social media operation, and events like this are all designed to motivate SNP and independent supporters to vote and to vote SNP. Let's be clear. And I'm looking forward to the affirmation, there is no credible alternative independence vote in this election. But we're not just for Scotland, we're not just for independence, we're also for the EU. We're for a public NHS. We're for affordable housing, and we're for all the people in every community, in every constituency in this country. And we're also for getting rid of this hopeless, hapless, useless Tory government and delivering change. But let's be blunt. Who on earth would vote for the party of Johnson and Sunak and Truss and Brexit and the hideous Rwanda policy? But we cannot risk just changing a blue rosette to a red one and hoping for the best. We need real change, and that only comes with independence. So let's ask the people the question. Does anyone really think that Continuity Keir will deliver real change when he will dispatch his frontbenchers onto the airwaves to talk about privatising the NHS or heaping praise on Margaret Thatcher? Does anyone think that Keir Starmer will deliver real change on austerity, on Brexit, on providing meaningful support to tackle the cost of living crisis? The truth is, Continuity Keir just won't cut it and won't deliver for Scotland. We've had enough Tory policy that we didn't vote for foisted on Scotland. Whether that's delivered in the future by a Tory Prime Minister or Continuity Keir makes no difference. Scotland needs and deserves better. And only the SNP are serious about that. I think that must be obvious from the actions our MPs took in Westminster over the past 5 years. They are for Scotland. Our candidates are for Scotland. We are for Scotland. And I want to see that message on every leaflet, flyer, election address, billboard, advert, T-shirt, badge and poster between now and the 4th of July on election day. So keep on campaigning. It's a simple message. Let's win for Scotland. And now, to keep things ticking along, can I please invite up to the stage activist Charlotte Armitage.
Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to Glasgow. It's fantastic to be here kickstarting our campaign together. And what a pleasure it is to be here alongside our talented candidates and so many dedicated activists who have been put in the graft long before Sunak called this snap election. Friends, we are all aware of the challenge that lies ahead of us in coming weeks. We've all seen the polls, we've all seen the biased media exclusion of our party in debates, but we have one crucial thing in our arsenal that has seen us win so many elections before this one. We have something that should be never underestimated. We have you, each and every one of you here today, and all those across the country who couldn't be here, who turn up, who chap doors, post leaflets, stuff envelopes, and are having conversations on our record with their loved ones. And we are in the fortunate position of being led by one of the most formidable politicians Scotland has ever seen. Friends, when John Swinney stood down from government last year, I tweeted that Scotland is a better place having had his leadership in office for so long. And the people of Scotland clearly agree, as he is the most popular political party leader in the country by a long shot. In comparison, Rishi Sunak believes his party has changed the UK for the better with austerity, Brexit and the cost of living crisis. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer pledges change, but so far the only real change that I can see is the transformation of Thatcherites from blue to red. So you see, we have an advantage here. 10 years ago to this year, the unionist machine refused to believe that we could secure as much support as we did in a referendum. And look how much has changed since then. We proved them wrong then, and we will prove them wrong now. We will win this election, and we will gain our independence. And on that note, I'm delighted to introduce to the stage some of our wonderful candidates: Katie Loudon, Stephen Geffins, Anam Kazar, Jacqueline Cameron, Naz Anise Mia, Samita Kamur, Hannah Bardell and John Nicholson. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, friends. Katie Loudon, representing Rutherglen constituency. My son and his friends are at about the same stage and age I was in 1997. Exam time, thinking about the future, and watching on, not yet able to vote in a general election. I'm going to start by grudgingly giving Starmer a tiny bit of credit here. Because wait for it, a few weeks before that 97 election, Blair said that a new Labour government would not reintroduce tuition fees. They did, 2 months later. As for Starmer's Labour, well, at least his U-turns and abandoned policies are clear for us all to see before a vote has even been cast. So far, we have refusing to bring an end to the abhorrent two-child cap, keeping outsourcing in our NHS, no new EU negotiations or freedom of movement, scrapping climate change investment, no more abolition of universal credit, and where's the nationalisation of public services? And I could go on. All ideas scrunched up into a ball and filed in Sir Keir's round filing cabinet. Some change, eh? These are not the actions of a party of principle. We had a fresh start with the new Scottish Labour MP last year, of course. Did you notice it? It's consisted of staying silent as Sir Keir backed Tory cuts, Brexit and the ongoing and creeping privatisation of our NHS, failing to vote for a ceasefire in Gaza, and abstaining on devolving cost of living powers to Scotland. But it's okay, because this time Labour really mean it Pinky promise. So thank goodness my children's generation now have an SNP Scottish Government who put the needs of our country first. An SNP Government who will continue to fight hard to mitigate Westminster austerity, cuts and chaos, even if that Downing Street podium gets a little nifty redesign. And here's a real promise. SNP MPs will always put Scotland's interests first. Whether that's on demanding action on the cost of living crisis, investment in our NHS, asking for more powers for the Scottish Parliament, or offering a choice over Scotland's future with independence. That's a promise all of our SNP candidates on the stage are standing on, and it's a promise that we will keep. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name's Stephen Gethins. I'm the SNP candidate in Arbroath and Broughty Ferry. Now, it's nice to be here with friends. Friends, I'm here to talk about the subject for the Westminster-based parties is the one that dare not speak its name. Yes, the subject of Brexit. Now, for every political generation and in every parliament, what we should all aspire to do, regardless of the political party you represent, regardless of where you come from, is that you make things that little bit better for those that come after you than you yourself inherited. Nobody can claim that, given the hardest of hard Tory Brexits that's been imposed on Scotland and, yes, elsewhere in the United Kingdom over these past few years. It's left us poorer, it's left us less fair, and at a time of crisis across Europe, it's left us more isolated. Now, I've no idea what's gone so right with a Tory hard Brexit that the Labour Party feel the need to embrace it. I've no idea what went right and what's made them change their minds, because let's think about a few things that people care about. It has made the cost of living crisis worse, putting up food and drink prices, impacting on the poorest in society. It's taken away opportunities from young people, opportunities that for those of us of generations that went before took for granted. That's unforgivable, that we are taking away opportunities that we were able to take for granted. It makes it less easy to take on the climate emergency. Now, across Europe, political parties, even the most extreme right-wing political parties, are now turning away from a policy of leaving the EU because the UK's decision has been so calamitous. Yet, in the UK, you have a main opposition party that has embraced the hardest of hard Brexits. Now, on this stage here, you're seeing future MPs who will provide the main opposition to that, to rejoining the European Union as an independent country and as soon as possible. Thank you, friends.
Good afternoon. I'm Adam Kazar, and I'm running to be re-elected as the MP for Airdrie Shotts, which I've had the privilege of representing since my by-election win in May 2021. I was elected at the age of 28, and whilst I can no longer technically qualify as a young person, I'm 31, I've got grey hair and a really sore back, I often think about what kind of country do we want our young people to live in? A Scotland that is fairer, greener and more prosperous, or a country ruled by Westminster, where the Prime Minister is the richest man in the House of Commons and the gap between the rich and poor continues to widen. A Scotland that is a global citizen standing shoulder to shoulder with the oppressed, or a country ruled by Westminster that continues to sell arms to countries who break international humanitarian law. A Scotland A Scotland where our wealth and natural resources are used here in Scotland to help the most vulnerable in our communities. Or a country ruled by Westminster where austerity is at the heart of government regardless of whether it's the Tories or Labour. A Scotland where decisions are made in Scotland, for Scotland, by the people of Scotland, or a country ruled by Westminster hundreds of miles away. For 14 years, an entire generation of young people have been struck by Westminster austerity. And don't forget, the 2008 banking crisis was under the last Labour Prime Minister, and the Labour Prime Minister before that dragged us into an illegal war. This has meant that for many young Scots, the doors of opportunity have been slammed shut. In Scotland, with the Scottish National Party, we can choose to take a different path, one that rejects austerity, delivers positive outcomes, and most importantly, offers young people hope. On Thursday, the 4th of July, let's get out there and elect as many SNP MPs as possible, not just for us, but for our future generations. We owe it to them, and we owe it to the future of Scotland.
Well, hello everybody, I'm John Nicholson and I'm standing in Alloa and Grangemouth. There's an election on, you may have noticed. And there's one thing that everybody agrees on, and that is that everybody wants to get rid of the Tories. Probably including Rishi Sunak. Why else? Why else would he call an election 25 points behind? He can't wait to get off to his house in California and leave the whole sorry mess behind him. And if that means sacrificing a few hundred Tory MPs, well, so what? He never liked them much anyway. But what of Labour? Well, let's be clear. Sir Keir Starmer is going to become Prime Minister next month, but will we notice the difference? Limpet close to the Tories in every regard, Sir Keir has dumped every promise he made to become leader. Sir Keir, like Rishi Sunak, now passionately supports Brexit, despite the mess. He's against free student tuition fees. He's against free prescriptions. He no longer believes in returning the utilities to public ownership. He thinks privatisation is a good thing in the NHS. Not all of it, he says, just parts, of course. He refuses to reverse the rape clause. He is against Scotland's right to self-determination. And, like Rishi Sunak, he was disgracefully against an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, even as the slaughter of Palestinians intensified. How disgraceful. He's against a cap of rich bankers' bonuses these days too. Only yesterday, Sir Keir told us that his number one priority was wealth creation. Really? I'd have thought a Labour leader's number one priority should be poverty reduction. Well, he'll still be Prime Minister because England is now, like us, thoroughly scunnered with the Tories. He'll win a huge majority in England. Huge majorities lead to arrogant, distant governments. We all remember Blair and Iraq, don't we? Well, I think Scotland has had quite enough of arrogant, distant Westminster governments. Scotland hasn't altered the result of a Westminster election since 1974. We get the governments England's voters choose, and this time they're going to choose Labour. So Scotland needs to elect a strong voice for Scotland, a group of MPs whose only priority isn't what's best for Sir Keir Starmer. We need independently minded MPs who will only do what's best for Scotland. SNP MPs who will stand up to Sir Keir, the most right-wing, conservative Labour leader of my lifetime. For England's voters, it's a terrible choice. Rishi or Sir Keir. Brexit or Brexit. Privatisation or privatisation. Sewage in their rivers or more sewage in their rivers. Big bankers' bonuses or even bigger bankers' bonuses. But here in Scotland, we have a better choice. We can control our own destiny, not make do, not put up, not listen to predictions of a false Labour dawn. We can choose to make Scotland an independent country back in the heart of Europe, and we owe that to ourselves and to our future generations.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Cameron, and I'm the SNP candidate for Paisley in Renfrewshire South. The bedrock of a socially just and compassionate society is how it treats its children. But right now here in broken Brexit Britain, there are more than 4.3 million children living in poverty. Statistics don't tell the human stories behind that number. That's children sitting in schools experiencing pangs of hunger, children who don't have the proper clothes or shoes for winter weather, and children returning to cold homes because their parents can't afford to heat it. That is simply unacceptable in a rich nation. The Child Poverty Action Group are clear that the two-child limit is a key driver of child poverty, and that is a political choice, but it's not Scotland's choice. Here in Scotland, we're forging a different path, and I was never prouder of our First Minister, John Swinney, when he made that commitment not to reduce poverty, not to tackle poverty, but to eradicate poverty. A bold statement, but here in Scotland, we've already made bold actions to achieve that goal. When a baby is born in Scotland, the parents receive the baby box, essential items to ensure every baby in Scotland has the best start in life. The Best Start grant, Best Start foods, policies that make sure children are healthy and nurtured in the early years of their life. The Child Poverty Action Group are also clear that Westminster welfare reform over the past 10 years has directly impacted children. That's why here in Scotland, SNP policies are mitigating that wherever we can. The Scottish Child Payment, lifting 60,000 children out of poverty. Scotland is the only nation in the UK providing this support, demonstrating that when it comes to child poverty, we are backing up our bold ambition with action, not rhetoric. So what is the human story behind those numbers and those SNP policies? It means parents getting support with early learning and childcare, children getting breakfast at their breakfast clubs, a free school meal, wearing a uniform just like their peers, using their free bus pass to go and meet their friends, and in short, given the same chances that every child should have. Child poverty affects a child's health, their well-being and their future chances in life. Our First Minister has made a commitment to eradicate it. And I and my fellow candidates, if we're elected, will take that message to whichever government is in Westminster and let them know that it's time for them to follow our lead, to end austerity measures and to create a society where all children thrive. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Naz and I'm the SNP candidate for Dunfermline and Dollar. All of us here today are united under the positive and just vision our First Minister John Swinney has for our country. Serious times call for serious leadership, and that's at every level. We must all lead too now. We have to be united by that determination to make this country reach its potential as a happier, fairer and wealthier country, an independent country. And that's what unites us deep down when you take away the titles MP, MSP, councillor, office bearer. Deep down all we are is independence activists. Grassroots activism is where I come from. I wasn't always involved in campaign meetings and strategy phone calls and multiple WhatsApp groups. I was the guy that used to go away. I was the guy that used to just go away with my leaflets and get them delivered. And for me, it's time to focus on those basics, bread and butter activism, get out, campaign, and that's where politics started for a lot of us, bringing that positive message to the people of Scotland. Listen, the other parties have got a lot. They've got a lot of money from their secret donors. They've got the media behind them, trashing us and spinning their narrative. And in Scotland, they've even got each other, the coalition. We know the rule. It's anything but the SNP. It's anything but independence. The lines are blurred, and I've even heard stories that they hold hands and play happy families and skip through the corridors of Holyrood. The one thing that they don't have is what we have. We're driven by hope. We're driven by belief and a common cause of an independent Scotland. So it's time to work and do what we do best. We win elections. We're the SNP. We get out, we campaign, we face the public, we answer questions and we turn voters. They say the party's in trouble. They say the indie movement's dying. I don't see that. I look around the country and I see stalls. I see people campaigning morning till night. I see yellow and I see saltires everywhere. When I look at the party, I see strength, I see resilience, I see experience, and I see winners. And all of us who stand in this election do so today because we stand on the shoulder of giants who came before us. I think it's important to remember that. People who gave everything towards that vision who aren't here today. Scotland needs SNP MPs who will put Scotland first in a Westminster Parliament that always puts Scotland last, and that's why all of us have to do what we do. It's going to get rough, it's going to get messy, and we have to look after each other, support each other. And over the next few weeks, we've got to stay strong, work hard, and listen, we've got to throw everything at this campaign. And wherever you are in the morning of 5th of July, wherever your count is, you walk out with your heads held high. Whatever the result, you walk out together with your team, knowing that you worked for and you fought hard for what we believe in, an independent Scotland.
Friends, the real-term cuts to Scottish Government's budget by Westminster is having severe consequences across all local authorities. At a recent Edinburgh Council meeting, the Tory leader commented he didn't understand why we were overreaching in what he described as odd communist thinking around food poverty. And now I'm going to quote him saying, "Food is much cheaper now than it's ever been." The first question I had was, where do you shop and how can I access this? But B, how far removed from reality are you? People are genuinely struggling to feed their families. It's an insult to all working people to deny their reality and their struggles. Our mission to eradicate child poverty is the right one. The domino effect of not doing something will have greater consequences in the future that we just can't comprehend. Now is the time to accelerate our efforts. We have a clear fight in our hands for Scotland, for the next generation. Friends, my name is Simita Kumar, and I'm honoured to be your Westminster candidate for Edinburgh South. Thank you.
Afternoon, folks. I'm Hannah Bardell, the SNP candidate for the Livingston constituency. Now, having just entered into a union of my own this week, here on my honeymoon, I hope you're enjoying yourselves. But it got me thinking about the other union that we're all currently part of. And I've spent nearly a decade at Westminster, along with my colleagues, representing the Livingston constituency that I grew up in. And I've seen how poorly it serves not just my constituents, not just Scotland, but all of the nations in the UK. And I've thought a lot about the values I hold and what I could bring to this partnership that I just entered into. Because when you're entering into the union of marriage and taking your vows of equality, respect, and above all, the ability to stand on your own and make decisions for yourself, you realise how vital they are to the success of any partnership. And I think if you ask most folk in England, or indeed the other nations of the UK, should Scotland be allowed to make decisions for themselves and be an independent nation, I think most of them would agree. Deep ties of friendship between the nations of the UK are not going to change. We in Scotland who support independence don't want separation, we want self-determination. And we're not... To popular belief, we're not trying to break up Britain. We want to stand shoulder to shoulder with the other nations of these islands as equal and independent partners who can hold each other to account, but can also work together, just as other European and global independent nations do. So why is there so much fear in the Westminster establishment about Scottish independence? And why do they continue to reject Scotland's democratic and legitimate right to decide what future they want? The truth is, Westminster only serves itself. Westminster that gave up the blood spill, post-Twitter scandal, criminal scandal, is complicit in dropping bombs on innocent Palestinian people. It's a Westminster that has members of Putin's inner circle amongst its lawmakers and the Lords. Lords who are unelected, can't be thrown out for bad or illegal behaviour. Lords whose unelected members increase while the number of elected MPs, particularly MPs in Scotland, decrease. A Westminster system that aids and abets corruption, a system that people in the UK are so wary of and weary with that some parties can't even field candidates. Good people who want to stay and serve are leaving because it's a place so devoid of honesty and integrity and it no longer feels safe. Westminster doesn't see Scotland or anyone else. Everyone deserves Scotland, but Scotland has the clear opportunity to lead the front, to show our neighbours that with independence, future is possible. So strong and independent, Scotland can be rich in energy ideas, managing our own resources and relationships. Scotland can lead on the recalibration and the renegotiation of our position within the EU and with those other nations. In the words of the writer Arthur Herman, Scotland invented the modern world. Now it's time, as an independent nation, that we work alongside our neighbours and friends, near and far, for greater peace and prosperity, protecting our citizens from poverty and austerity, and ensuring everyone in our nation and in the nation around us can flourish and succeed.
Friends, my name is Ellie Klinger. I'm an activist based here in Glasgow. And when I tell you, it is an honour and a privilege to share the stage with this group of incredible candidates. I really feel like I'm in front of the Avengers, honestly. We all know we deserve it, this lot right here. So, we know that young people have the capacity to make or break any election, whether it's local, general, or even at the Hollywood level. But friends, we are in a crisis of disinterest today. I'm going to tell you a fun fact. In 2019, young people under the age of 25, even she's shocked, she's shocked, and I've not even got her yet. Less than 50% of the young people in the UK under the age of 25 turned out to vote. I'm going to say that again. Less than half of the young people in the UK under the age of 25 turned out to vote. That's a massive, untapped potential that we have the capacity to connect with. Now, I want to give a couple of shout-outs here. So I am a proud member of the Young Scots for Independence. We've just launched an amazing we've just launched an incredible TikTok campaign that's going really well. I also, so shout out to the team over there, I also partner with Sadie Matthews in the front here to run Hot Girl Politics, which is another TikTok account where we bring the sexy back into politics. Not that it ever left, of course, if you've ever seen John Swinney. I'm joking, but I really want to shout out the digital team that we've got here, as well within the party HQ. At the end of the day, we are experts at what we do. We have been in government in Scotland for 17 years. And when you think about what we have achieved in that time, free bus passes for under 22s, free tuition for
never been called an Avenger before. I have been called a nationalist. And us nationalists at this general election, we are going to win Glasgow. And as we go into this campaign, let's do so with hope in our heart and with confidence in our stride. Because we have much to be confident about. And we start in that regard with our record. Because it is the SNP that provided the baby box. 2.5 days a week of free childcare. 100,000 children out of poverty. Free university tuition. Free bus passes for our young people. A nationalised rail service, no peak fares, a nationalised water service. %40 more new houses than in England, 70% more new houses than in Wales, and not a single day lost to strikes in our NHS. Now, friends, we have much, much to be proud of. All of that and so much more. But that is both the past and the present. And this general election is very much about the future. And for so many people on these isles, the overwhelming majority of people in England, they have no choice at all. As Peter Kunak, one of the founders of Deering, you might have heard of them. Rishi Sunak knows all about their song because he listened to it belting into his ears on Downing Street just the other week. He said in the last 48 hours that this isn't an election. This is simply a changing of the guard. And that's precisely what this election is. Because what we have in Westminster is a status quo. It's a desire, as Keir Starmer says, for stability. Well, I'll tell you what that stability means. It means £18 billion worth of cuts to our public services. It means no access to the European single market of over 500 million people. It means no freedom of movement. It means walking back and watering down our net zero potential. It means privatisation of our NHS. It means denying the people of Scotland their right to democratically choose their own future. Friends, we deserve so much more. Scotland deserves so much more. And that is why all of us on this stage and all of you in this room are for Scotland. It's why we always put Scotland's interests first. Because those aren't just slogans. Those are what we believe. And that's important because we believe in better. We believe in a nation where we can invest in our future, invest in our schools, in our transport, in our health service. We believe in a future that keeps that health service free at the point of use and free from private hands. We believe in a future where our young people can travel freely across the European Union and people who live in the European Union can travel freely in Scotland. We believe in a future where when those people come to work in Scotland, they are as welcome now as they will be in the future because they are the drivers, they are the glue that holds together our public services. They are the people that will drive the economic growth that our plethora of fantastic businesses want to deliver. Friends, you only get that future. You only get people arguing the case for that future if you vote SNP at the general election on the 4th of July. And friends, there's one other thing which is of incredible importance to me, given my status as the candidate for Aberdeen South at this election, and that, of course, is energy. Because for decades, Westminster has squandered Scotland's energy potential. 450 billion pounds has walked its way from Scotland's northeast to the UK Treasury, and what do we get in return? Well, let's not allow that to happen again. Let's make sure that our energy potential is in Scotland's hands. Let's not allow the Labour Party to walk away from their £28 billion commitment. Let's force them to stick to it. Let's not allow Scotland's offshore wind potential to be ruined. Let's make sure it delivers, not just for business, but for communities, for households and their bills. Let's make sure that we develop and create tens of thousands of jobs to power Scotland's economy for the future. Let's not allow the Labour Party to scrap 100,000 jobs in Scotland at this general election. The prize, friends, the prize is far too big to simply give away to the Westminster parties. Friends, the importance of voting SNP in the general election on Independence Day is all too clear to all of us. Now, when I joined the Scottish National Party, I didn't do so because it was easy. I didn't do so because someone told me Scotland will be independent tomorrow. I did so because I believe in something. I believe in better. And you know, the only way that all of us in this room can predict the future is to create it. And the only way we can create it is by working together and making sure that the SNP wins. Because when the SNP wins, Scotland wins. So friends, over the weeks to come, let's chat every door. Let's speak to as many people as we possibly can. And let's make sure that everyone right across the length and breadth of our nation knows that we are for Scotland. We will always put Scotland first. And friends, let's win together. Thank you.
Friends, thank you. It is wonderful to be all together today and to be in this room filled to the brim as it is with you all. I want to begin by thanking today's contributors. I have no doubt that, like me, you have listened and you are feeling deeply inspired by the contributions that they have made. What a wealth of talent we have in our party. I hope and I expect that, like me, you are also feeling geared up for the work that we have ahead of us now between today and the 4th of July at 10 p.m. I know that all of you and the scores of us who are not here today will do exactly as Stephen said, work door to door, street to street, earning and re-earning the support of the people of Scotland. It's what we've always done, and it's what we will do now. Now, it was just 4 weeks ago that I first had the privilege of introducing our next speaker as he launched his leadership bid at a social enterprise in Edinburgh. And as I did that, I reflected on what I considered to be the overriding sense of duty that I knew that he carried as he considered taking on this central role. And in doing that, I reflected on the words of the man himself. Earlier that week, he had been asked by the media if he was considering going forward for the leadership of our party. And he replied in a usual calm, quiet manner that he was giving very serious consideration to what was best for his family, for our party, and for our country. And that, for me, it was instructive, speaking to his values, his thoughtfulness, and to that overriding sense of duty which I know he carries. Now, 4 weeks later, he is leading from the front, working to take both our party record, of which we are so proud, together with our hopeful message of the future, and doing that into every community in this country that we love. And as I said 4 weeks ago, to many of us, he's a friend, a mentor, a colleague, a boss. To us all, to the Scottish National Party, he is among the most steadfast, loyal and unstinting advocates of the furtherance of Scotland's interests and of Scotland's cause to which we dedicate ourselves. Friends, please show your appreciation for the leader of the Scottish National Party and First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney.
Thank you very much, Mary. Friends, I think it's fair to say that neither you nor I really expected 4 weeks ago that I would be standing here as leader of the Scottish National Party and the First Minister of Scotland. But I hope it is for you, as it is for me, the loveliest of surprises. I am deeply honoured to be leading our party and serving Scotland as First Minister. If that was enough of a surprise, in truth, I didn't really expect that I would be leading the SNP into an election campaign within 2 weeks of becoming party leader. But here we are, and we are ready to make the case for Scotland. Poland Day, of course, is on the 4th of July, also known, of course, as Independence Day by our American friends. It's a really good day for Scotland to follow suit. In these next few weeks, we need to set out our case to the people of Scotland with energy, optimism and hope. And it's the people of Scotland that I want to speak to directly today as we set out our message. To set out why voting SNP will lead to a better country and a better future for you and your family. And for the people in this room and the wider SNP, it will then be up to you to take our positive, hopeful vision of how we can build a better Scotland to every community in our country. You are the greatest asset any party could have. Indeed, you are this party. So I need you to get out there and campaign like never before. And knowing you like I do, I know that you are up for this. This election is the biggest challenge the SNP has had for years. That may feel daunting, but it's a good thing. The voters are right to remind us never to take anything for granted, right to make us work even harder for them, and right to make us constantly earn and re-earn their trust. So here today, at our first major party gathering since I became leader of this party, let me make this commitment to the people of Scotland. I am here to serve you all. I am here to work hard to win your trust and your confidence. I am here to give everything I have to secure the best future for our country. That process starts with listening. And this is what most people in Scotland are telling us. They want rid of this disastrous, chaotic Tory government. They want a party. They want a party that's laser focused on their concerns. A party that's going to help them and their families live happier, healthier lives. In other words, they want a party that puts their interests first. They want a party that puts Scotland's interests first. And for the SNP, as the party of independence, there is a clear task they have set for us to demonstrate why achieving independence is relevant and indeed vital to their core concerns. So let me teach each of those in turn. Removing the Tory government, putting Scotland's interests first, and winning the decision-making powers that come with independence. Firstly, getting rid of the Tories. Never has a party demonstrated why they should be removed from office more than Rishi Sunak's Tory party. The latest wheeze in their desperate struggle for survival is to bring back national service. The national service the SNP is going to perform for Scotland is to remove this Tory government from office. In Scotland, the SNP is the challenger in every single Tory-held seat. So the electoral maths is clear. If you want Rishi Sunak out of Downing Street, vote for the Scottish National Party. To put it bluntly, across the UK, the Tories are on course for a huge defeat, a wipeout. Voters in England are going to send them packing. That is not in doubt. And that begs the question, what kind of change, if any, is that going to mean at Westminster? Now, I'm not saying that Labour are exactly the same as the Tories. They're not. But they are giving an awfully good impression of them. The only substantive change Labour seem to be offering is to change their own principles. And let me give you one really telling and worrying example. Their health spokesman, Wes Streeting, the man who in a few weeks' time will be the UK Government's Health Secretary, last week set out his plans for the NHS. He criticised the Tories on the issue of the NHS and the private sector. Fair enough, you might say. Bad news. He was not criticising the Tories for using the private sector too much. He was criticising the Tories for not using the private sector enough. He went on to say he wanted to go further than Tony Blair's New Labour. And he wrote, "I want the NHS to form partnerships with the private sector that goes beyond just hospitals." That sounds an awful lot like creeping privatisation of the NHS to me. Let me be absolutely crystal clear. The SNP rejects privatisation of the NHS, whether that is Tory privatisation or Labour privatisation. this is why it matters to Scotland. In another interview, the very same spokesman also said this: all roads lead back to Westminster, because even though this is devolved, decisions taken in Westminster have an impact on the NHS across the whole country. If there is creeping privatisation of the NHS, or if Labour do not increase investment in the NHS in England, our precious National Health Service faces a very bleak future. That's why I'm asking people in Scotland to unite on July the 4th and vote SNP to protect Scotland's National Health Service. Labour's tack to the right is designed to win votes in England. They don't seem to care too much about Scotland, though. They think Scotland's in the bag. What other explanation could there be to allow them to select a candidate who said this about criminal people smugglers? And I quote, "Why don't you send the smuggler gangs and put them on the barge that has been set aside for asylum seekers and ship the barge up to the north of Scotland? Who cares?" Well, I'll tell you who cares. The SNP cares. That's who cares. With Labour certain to enter office with MPs who don't care about Scotland, people in this country know, and they know this for absolute certainty, SNP MPs will always put the interests of the people of Scotland first. So let me now set out what putting Scotland's interests first actually means. In the few weeks I've been First Minister, I've made it pretty plain. We must be focused on people's top concerns. I'm proud of what we have done in government. We're helping with the cost of living through free prescriptions, the abolition of university tuition fees, and free bus travel for under 22s. In our NHS, Scotland has the best performing core A&E units in the United Kingdom for 9 years. On the economy, under the SNP, Scotland has had faster economic growth per head than the UK. On housing, under the SNP, Scotland has 40% more affordable homes per head than England, and over 7% more than in Wales. We've introduced the Scottish Child Payment. In our primary schools, there are record levels of literacy and numeracy. We've massively increased renewable energy, and we're already almost halfway to net zero. Your SNP government has transformed lives in Scotland, and we have a record to be proud of. So yes, we have been working hard, but I'd be the first to recognise we've got to do more to re-earn trust. That means more action. That's the task I've set my government. To help more with the cost of living, we're extending all-day off-peak rail fares. In the health service, we're investing £300 million over the next 3 years to drive down waiting times. Through our social security powers, we're keeping an estimated 100,000 children in Scotland out of poverty. And as junior doctors in England call another strike, Scotland is the only part of the United Kingdom to avoid NHS strike action by investing in pay deals for staff. So at this election, I'm asking you to vote for the SNP because we are focused on your top priorities, like the cost of living and the National Health Service. I ask you to vote SNP because we will always put Scotland's interests first. And that brings me to independence. People want us to demonstrate the relevance of independence to their lives. If we don't, then we're not likely to get much of a hearing in the midst of a cost of living crisis, and to be frank, nor would we deserve to. So when we talk about independence, we need to demonstrate again and again and again that we're talking about people's core concerns, like raising living standards and protecting the National Health Service. That laser-like focus on the daily concerns of people is our guiding star. Now, there are some people telling me to forget about independence at this election. But you know what? After looking at Sir Keir Starmer's serial U-turns in the pursuit of power, I think people are crying out for political leadership that sticks to its principles. For leaders who argue for what they actually believe in. And I passionately believe independence is the best opportunity we have to build a more prosperous and fairer country. My belief, of course, is not nearly enough. People are rightly looking for evidence that independence will boost living standards, protect the NHS, help us to build more houses and tackle the climate emergency. So here is the evidence. Westminster decision-making has meant austerity, Brexit, and a cost of living crisis being imposed on Scotland. Austerity from the Conservative government has been a curse that is inflicting significant damage on the NHS, on housing, and on other public services. Brexit alone, a product of Westminster decision-making, has wiped billions from the Scottish economy compared to EU membership. And it's pushed up food, mortgages and other household costs. Now, Labour knows all this. Sir Keir Starmer is an intelligent man. He knows this is the effect of austerity and Brexit. But he's still willing to impose all that damage on Scotland, whatever the cost, so that he can win power. I'm sorry, but that's quite simply unforgivable. It doesn't have to be that way. I've set out the benefits of taking decisions in Scotland for Scotland with the current powers of the Scottish Parliament. If we look at independent European countries similar to Scotland, like Denmark, Norway and Ireland, with full powers, we can see what is possible. Those countries are wealthier than the UK. They are fairer with greater equality. They have higher productivity and lower poverty. With all Scotland's resources, all our incredible renewables potential, all our brilliant universities, our industries, and above all, our people with all their talents, then why not Scotland? I can no more turn my back on that evidence than I can on my core political beliefs. No one is suggesting that we can match that performance overnight. But given the UK is moving so badly in the wrong direction, I would be failing in my duty to guide and nurture our country if I did not set out what I believe is a better future for Scotland. So at this election, my priority is to protect Scotland. Let's ensure the decade of destructive decisions at Westminster is never again visited upon the Scottish people. I ask people to vote SNP so that decisions can be made in Scotland for Scotland. Let me finish by setting out what my leadership is all about. I believe in bringing people together. 3 weeks in, I've already done that in this wonderful party of ours. I believe in a politics of persuasion, but if that is not possible, a politics of respectful disagreement. I believe in our wonderful, diverse, inspiring country, that everyone should have a chance to get on in life, that we will achieve more for the common good if we draw together the talent that lives in all of our communities. This election, it is those principles that will guide my approach. So I am asking people to vote SNP to remove Tories from government. I'm asking people to vote SNP to put Scotland's interests first. I'm asking you to work with me in a strong, unified team to encourage people to vote for a future made in Scotland for Scotland. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Now, we're going to, at these events, we are stalled. I'll be open to questions. We're going to make some questions from media organisations that are here. So,
welcome back to the studio here for this special edition of the Full Scottish. So that was the SNP's official launch of their general election campaign. The general election's been called for the 4th of July. So I'm just going to try and give a brief run through of what happened. First of all, apologies for the poor quality of the feed at some points, which made it quite difficult to follow, but hopefully you're still with us watching from home. So the first speaker was Stuart Hosey, and as the party organiser, campaign director, he welcomed activists and campaigners to the event, and he said that he monitors the SNP's social media output and thanked activists for their efforts. He talked about lending your vote to another party risks losing independence. The atmosphere in the hall seemed very upbeat right from the start. I'll maybe go back just to say I've made some notes to say that obviously the people that spoke, it's not the entire, not everybody who's standing as an SNP candidate in every constituency, but the people who were there, it was fairly well balanced. There were 5 men, 8 women, and there were 4 people of colour. Yes, it was so upbeat that there was even a happy sounds of a gurgling baby coming from the audience. There were some very familiar faces spoke, and some very long-standing MPs, and also some new faces who seemed to give very good accounts of themselves. Stuart Hosey, as I said, kicked the whole thing off by thanking delegates or thanking activists for their work. Hosey also asked, does anyone think continuity care will bring change, when he praises people like Margaret Thatcher? And he finished off by saying the SNP are for Scotland, let's win for Scotland. The next speaker was Charlotte Armitage, an activist, and she spoke about the biased media denying SNP coverage so far in the campaign that's only just started. Katie Loudon, who previously stood for in the constituency of Rutherglen and West Hamilton, was the next speaker, and she talked about the 2-child cap in the NHS and Brexit and climate change and no sign of nationalisation from the Labour Party. She also made a little dig at Michael Shanks, who beat her in the by-election there, and to make him MP by criticising his Westminster voting record. And then it was Stephen Gethins. Oh, by the way, she's going to be Katie Loudon is going to be standing again in Rutherglen this time around, so that'll be an interesting one to watch. Stephen Gethins is standing for Arbroath and Broughty Ferry, and he concentrated his attention on Brexit and how the cost of living crisis and the cost of living crisis was made worse by Brexit, and tackling the climate crisis is going to be made tougher because of Brexit. And he finished by saying that he wants to Scotland to rejoin the EU as an independent country. Next up was Anum Kazar, and she's standing in Airdrie Shotts, and she concentrated on asking the question, what kind of Scotland do we want to live in? And she talked about a fairer Scotland and Scotland that operates on a global stage and which uses its resources to help those who are struggling. The next speaker was John Nicholson, who's standing for Alloa and Grangemouth. And he started by saying everybody wants to get rid of the Tories, including Rishi Sunak. And talked about how he thinks that he really just called the election early because he just has had enough. And he went on to say that it would be that voters in England have a poor choice between the Tories and continuity Labour, but made the observation that in Scotland voters have a choice, which would be independence in the European Union by voting SNP. Jacqueline Cameron is standing in Paisley in Renfrewshire. She concentrated on child poverty and how John Swinney has said that he doesn't want to reduce child poverty or lessen it, he wants to eradicate it, and talked about how the Scottish Government is forced to spend money mitigating Westminster policies. Next up was Naz Anemia, and she's standing for Dunfermline and Dollar. She talked about the serious... she said, serious times call for serious leadership. Forgive me, I'm struggling to read my own handwriting here. And she talked about hope and belief and in a common cause, that is an independent Scotland. Next up was Samita Kumar, and that's we lost the feed a bit there, so apologies, Samita. I didn't really manage to catch very much about what you were saying, but you're standing in Edinburgh South. Next up was Hannah Bardell, who's standing in Livingston. She talked about the union and partnerships and how she wants Scotland to be able to make decisions for ourselves, and how she wants Scotland to be a good neighbour when it's independent. And then there was Ellie Koplinger, another activist, and she talked about the youth. She gave a shout out to the Young Scots for Independence, or the YSI, but she talked about her concern about how young people do not turn out to vote, and that's something that we need to that the SNP needs to try and work on. And then next up was Stephen Flynn, the SNP leader SNP leader at Westminster, who's standing in Aberdeen South. And he said that he went on the SNP's record and said this was not an election, but it was a changing of the guard, a reference to the fact that it looks like Starmer is going to win, but it's just going to be more of the same. The hall was very quiet when Flynn spoke. It was hushed. You've heard a pin drop, and he went on to talk about how Westminster has squandered Scottish energy potential and said, let's not let it happen again, and let's keep it in Scotland's hands. And then we had Mary McCallan. She's an MSP and is also the Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero and Energy, and she basically introduced John Swinney, but she talked about how full the venue was and put out a call to activists in the room. And before she introduced John Swinney and thanked them for their hard work, she spoke about his sense of duty and how before he decided to stand as First Minister, he took some time out to think about what was best for his family and for the party and for the country. And then we had the big event, which was John Swinney's speech as leader of the SNP and First Minister. He started off by saying that Labour are not the same as the Tories, but they do a really good impression of them. And he said that the SNP rejects privatisation of the NHS, Tory or Labour. Quite a lengthy speech. So he urged people to vote SNP to put Scotland's interests first. He said he wanted Westminster decision making has meant austerity, Brexit and the cost of living crisis have been imposed on Scotland. He said independence was a way to ensure decisions about Scotland are made in Scotland, urged people to vote SNP on the 4th of July general election to remove the Tories from government. He said that a combination of Westminster cuts and Brexit has reduced the money available for the NHS and other public services in Scotland, including housing. Talked about Brexit alone has wiped billions from the Scottish economy compared to when we had EU membership, and Brexit has also pushed up food and other household costs, a cost of living crisis. And he said that the UK is moving so badly in the wrong direction. He talked about the opportunity of higher living standards in Scotland and a better funded NHS in Scotland, with decisions made about Scotland being made in Scotland. And he said that was why he believes in independence. He talked about the politics of persuasion, but if that's not possible, he said he would use respectful disagreement. And he told those at the rally that he believes in Scotland's wonderful, diverse, inspiring country, that everyone should have a chance to get on in life, and that's why he believes so strongly in eradicating child poverty. And he was asking people to vote SNP to remove the Tories from government, and was asking people to vote SNP to put Scotland's interests first, and to vote for a future made in Scotland for Scotland. He talked about his pride in what the SNP had achieved. He highlighted free prescriptions, the abolition of university tuition fees, free bus travel for the under-22s and Scottish child payments. And he said that people are asking for evidence that independence would work. And he said that there was evidence in that the NHS in Scotland has been the best performing in the UK for 9 years now. And he said that the economy under the SNP has faster economic growth per head than the rest of the UK. And on housing, he said the SNP has more affordable homes per head than in England and Scotland. Yes, I'm sure that in the coming days in Broadcasting Scotland at 7, we'll have more to say on today's launch in Glasgow. But for today, that's it from us here on the School Scottish. So before we go, I just want to remind you that here at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. You know that our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you could afford £5 a month, please do consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. To everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, we thank you very much. So now our focus is on securing the future of independent broadcasting for Scotland by growing our subscriber base and regular funding, and we depend on your support to be able to pay our bills every month. So apart from that, thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next week.